Okay, so we're back to tackle sculpting the leg. Before I get started with that, I'm just going to quickly check my proportions. So I'll hit the P key to turn off perspective mode and bring up my transpose tool and draw out an action line from the top of the head. Make sure I get that up there towards the top. And holding shift, I can pull it straight down to the bottom of the feet. Now I can see on here a halfway point and then markers all the way down. So it basically gives me nice proportions for an 8-head tall character, which is what we're sculpting. Okay, so I want to check that about 4 heads down is where my great trochanter is sitting, which looks pretty close here. And then 6 heads down, we're going to be looking for our tibial tuberosity. And right now it's feeling like the patella or the kneecap is sitting a little bit low, which is maybe making his upper leg feel a little long. So I'm going to take my move brush with a nice big brush size and just go ahead and pull that up a little bit. Undo, redo. Maybe pull that forward. And then go back to the transpose tool and check it again. And I'm going to pull it up just a touch more. Maybe in a little as well. Okay. It's feeling a little bit like he's got kind of a long torso, but we can check all that stuff towards the end. I'd like to get to sculpting the leg, so I'll turn back on perspective mode because I want to be sculpting with it on. And then I'm going to hide the arms so they don't get in the way. Maybe even just hide the entire rib cage up so that we're only working with the bottom half. Okay, and what I want to start looking at here is the hip region. So that's going to include the Gluteus Medius, the Gluteus Maximus, or bony landmarks such as the great trochanter, the tensor muscle. That's what we're going to be looking at there. So clear my mask and step up a subdivision level. Okay, so we're going to want to keep an eye here on our ASIS, our anterior superior iliac spine, because we're going to have a lot of muscles sort of emanating from that region right there. First of all, we're going to have our tensor muscle. I'm just going to come down like this and connect to our IT band. It's going to sit right kind of in front of the great trochanter like that, and it's kind of a teardrop shape, much less so when the leg's not being flexed. Why don't I take the damn standard brush here and go ahead and carve some of this stuff in. I'm also going to be paying attention to the apex of my iliac crest here. That is the highest point on the iliac crest, and use that as sort of a guide for my Gluteus Medius and Maximus. So the gluteus medius, as you can see, is going to create this sort of a triangular shape, which is what we want to go for at first. Let's see here. And going back to the, again, finding that crest of the pelvis, and just behind that is going to be where the Gluteus Maximus is located. We want to be thinking about these muscles also not just individually but together, and what sort of shapes are they going to make when you look at them as a whole, or as a sort of one unit. So for the gluteus muscles, we're going to be thinking about sort of a donut shape going back like that. Now I do want that tensor muscle to break the silhouette like you can see it doing there, but I don't want it to be way out there or creating too much of a hit in the profile. So let's move on to the quadriceps. What we want to be thinking about for the quads is kind of a large teardrop shape. More or less like that. That we pull back to the lateral side of the leg. And we want to make sure that it breaks back behind the femur. So notice that the quadriceps are not just sitting on, are not going to be just sitting on front like that, but they're going to wrap around the side of the leg. Okay. And we can break this muscle group up, which I'm going to do now. We've got, well, not necessarily part of the quadriceps, but relevant at this point. The Sartorius muscle, which is going to come down from the asis and wrap around to the inside of your knee, and creates a border between the adductor muscles, which are the ones on the inside of your thigh, and the quadriceps muscles. And it's largely responsible for this plane change that happens from your quadriceps to your adductors. Then we've got our Rectus Femoris, which is also going to emanate from this region here. Create sort of a diamond shape. Okay. Of course, we've got the Vastus Lateralis, which is the one that's going to come all the way back to the side of the leg. Like that. And then our Vastus Medialis, because it's on the medial side of the leg. Just like that. Now we can kind of smooth this back a little bit. Now that I've kind of marked those shapes, I want to go in and refine these as individual muscles and make sure they all still tie together as the quadriceps group. The Vastus Medialis is going to create this really nice sort of teardrop shape that actually crosses just down below your patella or your kneecap. So you can see that the Vastus Medialis sits lower than the Vastus Lateralis. And these all are going to connect to tendons that will then cover the kneecap and attach down here at the tibial tuberosity. Now it's worth mentioning that on the side of the leg here we've got a large tendon, your IT band, which comes down and connects down here right on the side of your knee. Okay, and that's going to cover up a large portion of the vastus lateralis and actually cause it to kind of flatten out or be a little more planar on this side. Sometimes you'll see sort of a marking of the edges of that tendon, and sometimes you won't. So depending on what reference you're using or how you're feeling that day, you may or may not want to sculpt that in. One thing I like to do with this basic material, I, by the way, generally work with basic material 2 because I like the settings better than basic material 1. And I like working with the basic materials as opposed to the mat cap materials, which are these ones up here, because you can adjust the lighting on the basic materials as you go. And with the mat cap materials, the lighting is already baked in, so you don't have as much control there. But with the basic materials, if you go up under light, you see a little sphere here with a dot in it. That dot represents the light direction. And what I've done is I've customized my interface, so I've taken this sphere and moved it right down here so that as I'm sculpting, I can push the light around and see what my forms are looking like in different lighting. This is a really useful sort of trick for sculpting. Just like if you were sculpting in clay, and had a drafting lamp above your sculpture and you were to move it around to analyze the forms, same concept. Customizing your interface is really easy, by the way. I'm not going to go into that right now, but all you have to do is go under Preferences, Config, Enable Customize. Then what you do is go find the menu item that you want to move. And if you're on a PC, you hit Control and Alt, and then click that menu item, and then drag and drop it wherever you want to drag, or wherever you want to store it in your interface. And then once you're done, go back under Preferences and turn off Enable Customize UI. And before you close out ZBrush, hit Control Shift and I to store your custom interface. And that's that. Okay, so I could sit here and refine these forms all day long, but I'd like to move on. So I'll switch around to the back of the leg. Okay, so these muscles are going to connect. Well, we've got a few different muscles down here that kind of go down like this and connect to the inside and the outside of the knee, respectively. And both the biceps femoris, which is the one on the lateral side, this one here, are gonna, and the semitendinosus are gonna originate from up underneath the gluteus maximus, connecting to the pubic bone. It's also worth noting that the hamstrings are not nearly as wide as the quadriceps, so they're not going to break the silhouette up in the upper portion of the upper leg. With the biceps femoris connecting down here to the head of the fibula. Then on the inside of the leg, we have our adductor muscles, which we've talked about before, and how you can kind of think about these as sort of a cone shape. So one bony landmark that I want to look for is going to be the medial epicondyle of the femur. It's going to sit right about there in relation to the patella, maybe even a little bit higher, like that. And then just underneath that, of course, we've got the tibia. Thinking about the patella, it's kind of a shield shape here. That's going to sit right in between the condyles of the femur and just above the tibial plateau. Okay, so that's pretty good for the hip and the upper leg. I think we will stop for now and pick this up with the lower leg in the next video.